Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We're starting a little series about the future of film scanning, hardware, and software. We're here at Carmencita in Valencia with Albert and Abel from Carmencita, obviously. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that, basically the new things that are coming. They've been working for how long, Albert?
Almost 8 years now.
8 years. And you guys started with a Frontier scanner in a garage?
We started, Miguel, the co-founder of the lab, started with Frontier because he wanted to self-develop and he had some experience with lab equipment. And of course, he bought it from China. And of course, it was not working. And of course, it was in Chinese. So he spent a couple months trying to figure it out. And when eventually he had it figured out, he started it as like the Silicon Valley startup model from the garage of my parents. And yeah, we got in touch through the Frontier support group that there was. And yeah, we got to know each other, and little by little, until now.
Okay. Yeah, we are basically at the lab. You can see behind us, there's, I think, 5 Frontier scanners that are working. Yes. Probably one more that's not working somewhere in pieces or not. And basically, that's what the topic is about, is these scanners and technology are how old?
I would say it's about 25 years. Well, I mean, there is a series of Frontiers. You also have a 2500. And at least it might be 20 years old, at least.
What's the software it's running? Windows?
We are very proud of using Windows 2000.
Okay. And if you're not proud, what version would it be? The NT or 98?
NT, and before it was 98. And there is some new software, but we don't use it because it's meant for printing, so not so much for scanning. And that kind of uses XP, I think, which for us it's crazy new.
Okay, so yeah. So basically, the whole conversation about scanning is, in today's world, 2020, they're using machines that are 20 years old, breaking apart slowly, and the know-how is not really there anymore. They're probably a service manual I've heard is as big as an encyclopedia. Yeah. And you can't buy spare parts from Fuji probably, or most things. There's probably a little bit, but not a lot.
There is some. They are priced as if they were made of
solid gold. Yeah.
Yes, basically. And the thing is, it's hard to find, and that's why many people usually have Frontiers as a spare. We had one, but eventually we fixed it and we use it. But we always count that if there is a piece missing, we might have to Frankenstein to create another.
And you're actually an engineer by trade, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, so I'm a telecommunications.
So you know how to break things up a little bit.
Yes, I'm not afraid of that. Maybe I don't know it, but I'm willing to learn. So that's it.
So basically, the idea of this talk with them coming down here is the fact that nowadays we're seeing more. You guys see the news, you know about companies, and I have negative supply devices here, which is not sponsored in any way. Just I brought them because I had them and I wanted them to see it. But there's nowadays software for converting your images if you're scanning with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, and there's a lot of film holders that are trying to bring. Let's say between the home user and the lab, like lab, professional lab, there's trying to middle the gap, and actually people are selling their Epson scanners, getting into this. And it's funny because when you convert, it says like Frontier colors and Noritsu colors. We actually also have a Noritsu HS.
The funny thing is even they say highlight soft, or which is the small commands in the, and it's like, I don't know if that makes sense.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to them is about the fact of what future they see to the business model, because the machines are aging, and yes, they're working, and you guys develop and scan probably hundreds of rolls a month, or if not thousands, and other labs all around the world are popping up with Frontiers. Basically, people buy a Frontier and they're a lab, and I air quote the lab because there's more to it, and I think this should be appreciated. A lot more work. But to you guys and to everybody that wants to start, it's a little bit more than just that. I have a Frontier scanner, and I can tell you it's not just turning it on and you're immediately Carmencita's little, cousin. Yeah. But that's becoming harder and harder to maintain. So what's your impressions on hardware issues in the following time?
So I have to say that Frontier machines and especially the scanners from Fuji, they are very well built machines. It's incredible because they don't break as often as we might think, and we like really trash these machines with at least between 30 and 40,000 rolls every year.
Yeah.
So,
So you're pushing. Well, they're in. I mean, at the end, they were made for this.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially like I mean up and running. Although back in the day there was a big network of support service, which was can I swear in the podcast? No.
Yeah, you can swear somewhere.
Effing expensive, and it was a business model back in the day. So, but the hard thing is just to be able to find the parts nowadays, because changing the parts, these machines are built for nobody to touch them unless it's a trained person or it's an official. So software-wise, it's very hard to modify, and you need a specific cards for it. It's not just like we had a problem with a RAM, and it was impossible to find this module unless
exactly
you
the module.
get it from
A different one. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So this was the biggest problem. Not that much the money, but
The funny thing is, you guys met thanks to a broken Frontier,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he had one with a broken, I think it's graphics card, if I'm not wrong.
Something like a
it.
RAM. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a
Very
classic.
particular RAM.
It's one of the classic problems.
He's one of those that bought a Frontier scanner and was going to be a lab, and at the end, things went to
Yeah,
them
it
working
was-
together.
Yeah, it was the perfect time, because if it would be 1 year ago, it would be different. But yeah, it's a classic problem. So that being said, even if they handle it quite well, I don't know if the demand increases to a level for professional labs. I think there is a point where it might be complicated. Same as happens with developers.
Yeah, well, the developing machines, of course, the Noritsu V30s, V50s, V100s, which you guys have right now, and Jobo machines. I'm a very big Jobo user and those things. And Jobo's still working, so you can buy a new Jobo, but it's not the same as the old versions. It's not fully automatic. It doesn't have all that. So you guys are coming to a point where the hardware and the software won't be forever working. Are you guys looking into options? And of course, one thing I want to make clear is something like Nicosphotographyshow or Negative Lab Pro, like implementing into a lab workspace is not that easy, because you need a lot of quick turnaround time, consistency, dust-free digital ice, which is a huge deal, and we'll get into later. So what is your idea of maybe, let's say, a not long-term, like medium-term time-wise for what will happen?
Medium term, I hope nothing breaks.
Okay, yeah, but we're not trying to make it break. We're trying to just think about what could it be. You guys probably have 5 machines running plus a Noritsu, so you have to think about, yes, you can buy another Frontier if it breaks, but like, have you studied maybe having a secondary sort of plan B or plan C?
So at the moment, it's been not so much one of our priorities in a way, because it was harder to deal with the demand, like to the workflow, the complexity of like you get 1,000 rolls more a month, and that's a big complication to output that work. But it's something that I've seen people in the US also talking about, like from Photovision and from Indie. I think they were trying to research something I saw in an interview.
Yeah, they mentioned something. They were trying to make a new
I think that was kind
professional
of 2 years
scan.
ago or
Yeah,
something.
it's either working really well and they're not saying a word, or it totally died and nothing
So,
happened.
I mean, maybe people hate me for this, but since one more thing to add. But the thing is, thanks to my background in engineering, I think I'm a bit more able to understand the complexity of these kind of machines than probably just somebody that loves photography or a photographer that jumps in and you see it working and it's like, fine, it's nice. It's just a camera and something fast, and it's fucking incredible. The engineering, the millions and millions of yens spent in Japanese #1 engineering back in the day to develop these things.
No, yeah, of course, it was mainstream. It was in every store, in every neighborhood. Well, we live in Spain, so neighborhood, but shopping mall, whatever. So those machines are running. So you have the 35 millimeter negative supply, which you haven't had the time to look too much into.
So
we have the 120, which I don't know if you've seen it, but the 120 version actually has like a little resemblance to at least my Frontier. And it has the magnetic little, because what happens with the Frontier, usually it opens the gate, film advances, and then a magnet brings it down again. And this kind of has a very similar feel to it, which it has the little.
Okay, this works. Yeah.
So like that is working, and this is, I think, a user. There's a couple of labs I know are starting to use the devices from Negative Supply. And as I said, this is not an ad in any way. I just wanted to show them because there's more and more holders coming out and the software. And so let's talk hardware-wise. Are you up to date with what's coming out in hardware?
I'm up to date, but not. And I told with the guys at Negative Supply, I'm not up to date. I know that exists, but I didn't experience the workflow.
Also, probably consumer holders is maybe not your
Exactly.
guys' target, like something like the Pixelator, or you know,
Exactly.
these things are maybe more made for do-it-yourself-at-home rig.
So the thing is, I think it's extremely interesting, especially because I know there is more and more people that's coming, and this is actually was the goal of the lab at the beginning. It was never to be like, oh, we have to process all the film in the world. No, it doesn't make sense. We just wanted to help photographers that shoot film be happier with their work, and I think Negative Supply is coming from the same basis, and everybody that develops software that helps to do that, it comes from the same basis. So I think it's great. It's there is a lot of limitations that like when I see it and think about the lab, because if this is perfect for like I'm gonna shoot some rolls and scan it myself, but when you have to deliver 200 rolls a day, I don't think this is gonna be able to deliver that. But maybe yes, in the because we saw some videos about the speeds that are able to with synchronized motors and stuff like this.
So you think that the need would be, of course, for a lab to have it more automated?
So basically, you need. It's like if you talk with DHL, you know. Yeah. I don't think they are interested in building their own mechanics and cars and planes. You know, they need to do all the rest. And everybody needs to focus on their work. So if they could come with a solution that is like, look, it's of course it's not going to be like something like this, but a bit bigger, attached to a computer by Thunderbolt or whatever, and it converts everything and it's storage, and that would be serious business.
Yeah, something like, from what I've seen, and I think the market is moving slowly. Of course, we're at the first steps of what seems to be the new generation of scanners, and I'm going to air quote it because they don't really scan automatically in any way. Your Frontier, you put the film, you click yes, and basically you've got your film converted and scanned. These are just a holder. A lot of people have complained of, it only holds your film, and yes, it's expensive for what it does, but it does it well. I think what we need to see the next, and we've seen this from the Camera Dactyl and the Mongoose, which is the automatic one, 3D printed. It has a signal to the camera that tells, okay, frame number 1, boom, take a shot. Frame number 2, shot. And it does a roll in around a minute and a half. And don't quote me on the times, but like that's what I think.
It's fast.
It's the entry level to maybe a more like hardcore, like
that's really
hobbyist.
Yeah,
like, but like I shoot a lot of film. I don't know, maybe have 10, 20 rolls to scan at the same time. If I was scanning that on, say, like Epson, that would take forever long. And yes, there's Pac-Ons, which I think was a lab equipment, mini lab equipment, but now has made it into the mainstream. They're more mainstream than Frontier scanners, that's for sure. But like this would be something that Pac-Ons are aging, and they do have the converting software, which is great. But this could be a great thing, and patched with a computer with a plugin, because basically it's like a plugin, you can convert film pretty fast. So you guys see it maybe getting there if you had more automated all-in-one solution.
Yes, but the main thing is that will not be cheap, of course, because if you think...
But how much is a Frontier scanner? Let's say a ballpark from the bottom to the top.
Exactly. The problem is, and I was talking with Colenta, the manufacturers of developers, and we live in an age where we have all these like equipment that is already like devalued or depreciated, but it's not real. Like the cost of a Frontier was around 60,000 euros, maybe a bit more. With a printer, it was easily 120K or 100. So that was the cost of the real machine built. So if you move back and you would try to create a Frontier today, it would not be cheaper than that. Yeah. It's impossible. And so the thing is, I think these are great solutions for And maybe
end users.
maybe it could be something modular, but like if you want to home scan, you can just buy this piece or a little motor and then you do the conversion. But the question for the developers, I think, would be, is it worth it to have a team that develops this and costs this and offers this solution that maybe a lab can buy for, I don't know, 20K?
How many will you sell?
Exactly. With the handicap of knowing that there is at least, like, I don't know, 1,000 frontiers on the market that still are working. So probably we are moving there, but it's not extremely...
And one question that I think is like important is, yes, you're running a working operation. You are focused on, like you said, it's not my main goal to think about converting and buying one of these. But don't you think maybe like a lab, you guys, Carmencita, are usually a little bit of a step ahead, at least in marketing and branding and things, maybe starting to have a bit of a leeway of like, yeah, this stuff is not coming new. There's no new solutions. Maybe we start looking and having our eyes open and our ears open to see what's happening to when maybe we don't have it for everything, but right now, imagine you say, I want to scan 4x5 and give more resolution than you guys have a fine scan that I'm seeing back there. Like you're like, okay, 4x5 is something that you can't do in the Frontier. You don't have the software. Maybe we can rig up like a little scanning process that we can scan in our lab and give good results because you stitch. Because nowadays, mirrorless cameras with a pixel shift are giving, like, I know Panasonic sells like an S1R or S1H. I'm not super keen on the numbers. That does pixel shift. It's like 100 megabytes or something like that, or megapixels. And like, I think I was a lab, and yes, everyday operations are always taking a toll on your time and work. But like, I'd be like, okay, there's something that's happening there. It's starting to grow, and you're seeing more growth. And also, your customers are getting these products that now it's not of Epson, and they all have a mirrorless camera, because nowadays mirrorless cameras are sold for a couple €100, and you can start scanning at home. And do you see that maybe being a way that you can be more flexible, maybe give different prices, or I don't know, like, I think it could be important to I'm not saying you're focused only on what you're doing every day, but maybe having a bit more awareness of what's happening.
Yeah, I think so. When thinking about the project, clearly you need to advance to some direction, and we've seen this in the industry, like in traditional industries. When you talk about smartphones, for example, like usually everybody is developing in a way. Cars, they are developing in a way. Computers, because it's like the new thing coming. In our case, it's a bit different, because it's like we are working with a market that's already, like devastated. And now there is so many different players wanting different things all over the place. So I pay attention to these things, but at the same time, for me, the most important thing is the workflow, in a way. So I think these are great solutions, and that's why when they send us, I don't know, when we did some articles and Negative Supply reached out, we did the comparison about Frontier and Noritsu, which exploded on Instagram. It was crazy. And they sent us the carrier, which I think it's beautifully built and it's really nice. And for me, the most interesting option was that they had the option to scan the holes, the sprockets. This was something we cannot do. The other problem is, like, these machines do such a good job, it's very high to come up against it. So I would love that there is more things coming up, because it's perhaps the worst thing of our industry, that it's really hard. And even you do a great job in the news, putting all the news together, because otherwise, also when talking with Juho from Camera Rescue, was like, otherwise nobody would know what's happening.
They're little startups. At the end of the day, these projects are not coming from corporations. It's not Fuji, not Kodak, not Noritsu, that are, like you said, you talked to Colenta, and Colenta was like, I sell you a new film developing and it's 50K. I don't even make a lot of money with that, because I'm going to sell, what, 3? Like, and the man hours, he's better selling, I don't know, whatever, inject printers or whatever things, or Lambda, whatever they're making. I'm not aware of that. But like, it's an industry that's hard. So I think these are coming from people that are makers and thinkers and designers. Like the software and all these things are coming from people that are sitting at home, and they're like having time to test these things. And that's why it's coming from the bottom. It's coming from behind. Like I see it in the news. Like, the stuff I talk about is not mainstream. I wish I could announce, hey, Kodak's making a new pack on it. It does 35, 120. It scans in a minute and a half. It gives you raw, 16-bit, blah, blah, blah. But it's probably not going to happen. And seeing these things, that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to come with you guys, talk a little bit about what you see in the future of this. And this is hardware-based, but like software-based, how do you see that? Because you guys are a lab. And this I'm going to mention because I came a year ago to do a video with you guys, and I was very impressed.
Check our video right here.
Yeah, we'll link the video on the top. There's a little story about that on camera, Vil. So Jordan, regards to you. Yeah. And I came to help, and I was very impressed that not only do you scan with the Frontier, and then you send to your customers, but you guys give like a bit more of a develop, scan, and edit.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to say edit, but it sounds a little rough to say edit.
It's a bit, yeah.
You polish.
We adjust.
Polish.
For me,
like.
I thought about this yes. Not that kind of polish, but we have I would say a two-step color correction process, which looks super fancy. Like if I can make some like syllabus, like an acronym, that would be amazing, you know. But yeah, because it doesn't make sense. For me, the key of film photography, and I think why it's gonna get more popular, is the simplicity of it. Yeah. That's why so many people feel driven to it, the same way as vinyl records, because it's not complicated, you know. Yeah. And I think it's our job to make it simple. So it's the huge challenge for the engineers to make it simple, because they are the ones that are fucked up. You know, like I remember when I was studying, they were explaining us how the USB protocols, because at the end is a protocol between two computer or two devices. It was so complicated that to establish and to program for the user just to plug in and it works. Yeah. But there is like a huge team of engineers like.
No, I mean making things work is okay, but making things simple is so different.
Oh, of course.
Like the fact that when we grab, and this is something that happens to me with cameras, and like when you're teaching photography, it's like film photography. It's like the fact that I grab a 29 euro, and this is secondhand market, and I just point and shoot, and everything that it's doing inside.
How much would you think this would be worth new today? Like if they manufacture.
I think this would be a minimum 300 to 500 euros for a point and shoot that has auto exposure, flash on and off. That's it. Yeah. Like nothing else. Not even changing the ISO and just the DX reading, like that stuff. Like to me, making it simple is what's beautiful about the software you guys use. It makes it like the training to train a guy here at the lab, but probably to use a Frontier is how long?
Exactly. To train, like this is the very good point, I think, because it's a bit like cooking, you know, to use a stove and a knife, how much? With a day, you know how a kitchen works. To really know how to use this, you know, it's like, damn. Now we were looking at the, at scans we were doing like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And we can see like, oh my God, how we were thinking like this is okay. You know?
Yeah, that happens when you print in the darkroom. Like my prints from 5 years ago, I pull them out of the box and it's like, whoa, I thought this was good.
Yes, exactly.
Like I've learned so much more.
But it's good. It's kind of reassuring. Like, okay, we are moving forward. Yeah. And right now our training for scanning, like, so basically the way they start is people start knowing, like actually Abel is under the training right now. Maybe he can explain you a bit more about that. But it's a starting of first having an understanding of how the lab works, then moving into adjusting, like the last step. So you train your eye. And at least it's 2 to 3 months just only on seeing images and doing the final step. And then there is people like the chief editor is supervising that.
Well, I have to say he did scan my film the other day, so if I have any problem, it's
complain directly.
The intern.
I did not the scan.
Yes. So and then it moves to scanning, and scanning it's like the crucial part because there is a team of editors that rely on your output.
Yeah, you basically, like, he starts the cooking of the picture. Like, it goes through the scanner, you choose a couple parameters, and then once you're giving that to the editor, if you give him a bad product or a bad raw material, then it's going to be harder for them.
So now our...
No?
Yeah, I think it's a middle point. No? I think do you take a regular scan or not the best scan in the world, but do you then make a little corrections? And I think it's a good output. And then if you have a really nice scan, I think it's not all in the scan. It's the exposure in the image, the
Of
feel.
course. I mean, as a photographer, you got to do your part.
Yeah.
Like I always laugh about the fact.
Some people forget about this.
Yeah, this is so important.
And I'll link the video that we're talking about that I did, and I shot 4 rolls, and one had light leaks. They did to try to correct as much as possible. But one of those things I always say is when you take the picture, you're taking the picture. Then when you develop it, at least in black and white, I consider you're retaking it because you can do it differently if you're doing it at home. And if you're developing or putting on paper, then you're interpreting the picture. So that's why I always think there's 3 steps to shooting film. It's the taking, the developing, and the printing, or the finalizing. In your case, would be scanning.
The funny thing for me is when I look at an image, even if it's printed or it's on digital, there is so many factors because from the moment that people shot the image, how that film was stored, because sometimes it's not well stored, the camera, how it's developed, how is it scanned, how it's corrected, and then how it's printed. There is so many effects that when I see a wonderful image, it's like, oh my God, it's like you see all these things aligning and it's like blank magic, So this is, I think, one of the other parts of the romantic aspect of it, which we need to challenge sometimes, especially with our professional clients.
Right now, in my case, it's a learning process and all the things. But I think, do you have to thinking in every step in the chain to the first to the end? I think all the things, exposure, scanning, but at least it's a work with the eyes at the end. I think Albert have $1 million eyes with the contrast, with the color and all the things. I see a image and I know how. I think I know how much process do you need for the image, but I think it's expert eye looks all the things together. It's
but usually when you're finishing the picture, like the more experienced you are and the more you've seen. And one thing you told me last time I was here was that you had seen that at least the editors that were women or scanners that were women had a bit more like a sensibility to color that was different, which I thought was very...
Yeah, I hate to make these bold statements, but I have to say, we generally had always been more women in the team for no particular reason. It was absolutely objective criteria. And it was when we did color tests through email and so on. It was just often women had a bigger sensibility for appreciating color or choosing, which is wonderful because usually we see guys more driven to stuff, to technical stuff, and women more driven to the output of it. Why do you shoot film? Because I love this color and these greens and with these tones and the bokeh and everything. It's not because of the lens. It's oh my God, 2.8 with a coating of sapphire or something,
No. Yeah, I have to say I'm a gearhead, as you guys might know. So I have a hard time. Sometimes I actually have a video that's very old that was something like "Don't buy more cameras," which of course was clickbaity kind of thing. And it was because I was just buying cameras all day. And one day, my wife and partner was like, maybe you should stop spending on cameras and maybe just finish your pictures. Because I was shooting and developing, and they were all storing in print file cases. And she was like, maybe just try to you can spend the money on this. If I won't have a problem if you finish your darkroom and that's when I started printing and putting pictures on the wall.
I feel you in a way because for me it's always been about the process of the image taking. For me, this is the biggest magic of all. More than seeing the result, and that's why I'm the worst putting my pictures out there. But because I love the craft of it. But this is something, it's very personal for me. It's not something I need to display. While at the same time, I don't diminish people who do that. On the contrary, I admire and I'm thankful that they do because then I can see their work. But in my case, it's a bit gear, lab, head, company-wise. But yeah, I think everything plays a role on it, and that's one of the biggest magics.
So to go back to the thread of scanning and like the future.
Oh
of
yeah,
it.
sorry to interrupt. I wanted to answer something that about the color and the training and how long it takes to use that. We also changed the way we train, and it's getting closer and closer to military, and at the moment to say that one person is able to scan no problem at the correct speed, at the correct quality, and so on, it usually takes about close to a year. Because they are not scanning with like, okay, this is my scanner, this is my film for today, and I will scan. No, it's like you're scanning on 2 scanners and sometimes at 3 scanners at the same time, and correcting like.
One thing I'll have to say, that happens because the scanners take, I think it's like, depending on the resolution. So when you get a lab to scan your film on a Frontier and you ask between the sizes, and I don't know if it's M, L, XL, or whatever it is, but let's say SML, just to make it simple. Like the difference is not that it will have, like, it takes more time per scan. So instead of, let's say, a second, and this is random numbers, you probably will correct me now, it's like 9 seconds. So when you guys are scanning, that's why you have a scanning operator that's on 2 scanners, because you optimize when you're saying yes to a scan, you turn to the other one and say yes to a scan, and you're going from one to the other, because if not, someone would be there sitting for 9 seconds looking at the, what was it, Windows 2000, think about what they're doing. So like that's why, like, because I if I was a client, I was like, yeah, they're scanning with 3 scanners, like, what is that? Like, we love your film, you know, it's a factory, which at the end it's true. A lab, as much as you want to romanticize it, it's a little factory.
It's we are pulled in both ends of the request, because in a way it's like, oh, it's very romantic, and it is, but I want my things on time at the same time. So it's like, okay, then we need to speed up. And actually, it was not something that was born from us like, oh, we need to speed up things because blah, blah, blah. No, it was really like, hey, do you think we can put 2 scanners together because we feel like we are losing time, and can we color correct? And it really stepped up the game like incredibly. So it's on the biggest resolution we make, which is the XXL on the Noritsu. It's easily like 20 minutes for a roll of 35. And on the Frontiers,
What's the resolution on that?
It's 5,000 by 7,500. So it's,
and that's why
200 to.
I feel like the software and the hardware is very good, but like the fact of what's coming and the digital bodies that you can now buy for a fraction is that. And that's one of the things when I think about scanning do-it-yourself version with, let's say, digitizing, which is what people are mentioning nowadays, with this, is you can change the brain. You can't change the brain on a Ritsu or on a Frontier. No. You can't just be like, oh, there's a new sensor. Let me take out this, what is it, CCD, and put a new one. Like the fact that you buy whatever setup you build, and you can be like, okay, there's a new, I don't know, Panasonic or Olympus or Sony that does super high resolution. You can just change the brain and have a new higher, and it doesn't take 20 seconds.
Yes, exactly. Actually, some companies do that with Super 8 scanners, and because they change the heads and you say, you want the version of 4K? Okay, we change the head of the sensor, and it's like, I don't know, 3,000 euros more. But of course, it's always been like for everybody that gets into this, and it's like, what it would be a scanner with today's technology and everything, and it's impossible not to fantasize with that. I hope we can get there someday, but there is many handicaps. At the same time, the sensor. Can we get really geeky, or is it?
Yeah, you can get geeky enough. No, I mean we're already like at 20 minutes. We probably lost half the audience.
You can skip. You can skip like.
No, I'll put chapters. Now you can put chapters on YouTube. Okay. So guys, we'll have chapters on the video. But geeky part.
Geek stuff. The thing is,
I'll just go like this because I'm not so good at that. So I'll just head you.
The thing is, the sensors that the Frontier has. It's one of the only scanners that use full sensors, not linear sensors, but full sensors.
So global shutter sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, it's like a camera. And
and I'm not too keen on this in the Frontier, but on the cinema style, when you see the rolling shutters, because the sensor's reading linear, if I'm not wrong. And global means it takes like one shot and then one shot, and it takes that 24 times in a second. That's why it's video.
Exactly.
So the Frontier is a global shutter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what it does, it is a CCD sensor, not a CMOS, which has all the cameras, because it's much easier to manufacture sensibilities and it was cheaper, and they push that. But CCDs offer like a bigger quality in sensor image taking because it has the 3 arrays of sensors for each pixel. You have the pure the full information of the RGB. So the thing is, what we see is that this is a key part on the image taking of the Frontier, because what it does is the sensor, especially it's funny because the sensor is black and white. And what it does, it changes the lights by the LED that it projects.
Actually, when it calibrates, if you look at it, it's like
it's like
poltergeist.
Like
If you look at it straight into, I think you will always be like, haunted. No, but in mine at home, when you see it, and it's like, if you look, I think it's like that movie, that Poltergeist, that you like swallow by the TV. It's like, don't look at that.
Exactly. So
it projects the light.
Yeah, so this is why it's enabled to capture and retain highlight detail incredibly. Like it's beyond what should be normal. It's really, really polished.
For that old technology.
For that old, it's incredible, dude. I'm telling you, it's crazy. And of course, we have much better technology sensors, and it's the same thing that I think with audio, people talk about the same. Like you have more computing power in your phone that the Beatles had in the whole studio of Abbey Road back in the day. But doesn't mean that you're gonna make better music with your phone. So it's a bit kind of the same. I hope, and especially with what you are doing, I think it's really cool to bring closer and closer the industry and the consumers, or the photographers, or whatever you want to call it. And hopefully, if there is enough will, probably we can start finding solutions that are better. And that's why we talk with Colenta. That's why it's so cool to talk with Negative Supply and the putting things together.
The idea of this series of videos and why I'm here is to start a conversation that, even though it will be through the YouTube channel, I want to see how people feel about different products. So like I've been talking about, there's like right now, I know at least 4 different versions of color inverting software. Like the film holders that are coming out, the motorized, and I wanted to have the Mongoose from Camera Dactyl, but it's in customs in Spain, which right now is like a black hole, so it'll get here one day, because that stuff is very interesting to me, and I will share with you guys when I have it. So I think the fact that, yes, the market has gone down in case of the super corporations. Fuji's not listening to anyone. The front Noritsu is not listening to anyone anymore. They're doing they're focused. They're making money. That's the whole point. And this is a business that's not so, like we were talking about it last night at dinner. It's not the kind of business you get into to get rich. You get into just, you have a passion for this, you make it. And I think seeing those corporations are pretty much gone, but they're starting to see, like we have conversations with people like Kodak nowadays, or Ilford, and you see Ilford coming into the community and maybe starting a YouTube channel and having, like, that is what I try to push to see, like users see these things and know that they can, throughout the YouTube channel or through Instagram and social media, talk to brands is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays 2020 is the year of online Zoom calls. So it's easier to Zoom call a company and have some sort of chat. So that's my idea to bring in this series.
I have to say there is some really cool stuff that Kodak they are thinking about. Well, not Kodak as the Señor Kodak, like especially the guy we usually talk with, Charlie. It's one of the youngest people in the team of Kodak Alaris. And he's really pushing and bringing new ideas to the table, which are super exciting. Of course, then you have to make the numbers and talk to the whole chain, because even if they want to make a chain in, I don't know, we want to change a typo in the package, that you need to put a request for 6 months.
Of course. It's a big company.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like here where you just go over and change the printer.
Even here, it takes some time. But the thing is, that's the goal of, I think, everything we do is to create probably an ecosystem that can answer easily to the demand of photographers or the new market, because if we want to keep it alive, we need to keep it nurturing is the word.
We're gonna keep everyone. Like, to me, it's that, like, we can't leave anyone out. That's why, at least in my YouTube channel, I try not to be negative about things. Because I think that there's startups that need the support. Of course, when you're starting, you don't have, like you said, the Fuji millions and millions of yens to like develop this. So I think we should all kind of like look into it as a global effort. And yes, everybody's got to scratch their pocket and put money towards something, and it won't always be perfect. Like, we can all make mistakes. Labs, shooters, YouTubers, whatever you call it, we make mistakes and it's fine. So yeah, anything else that we should know about maybe Carmencita looking into the future? You want to mention something?
I don't know. Well, yeah.
we had one more topic, which was the dust removal software.
Okay.
That's something that we've mentioned. I mentioned in the news, or I think I've mentioned at least to my Patreons, is the fact that there are efforts, because one of the biggest problems when you're scanning with a digital camera is the no infrared dust removal, which was the digital ice, which I don't really even know who made this.
It's a pretty cool name, actually. Digital
It
ice.
sounds very cool.
Ice baby.
It sounds very cool. But like, digital
cold,
ice
baby.
is not, of course, built into a Sony or Panasonic or whatever. But there are companies, and in this case, at least, I've talked to Adobe, which is trying to develop and push dust removal, let's say AI. So what is it in English? Artificial intelligence. So it will hopefully come to a point when you scan and convert with your do-it-yourself, or maybe Carmencita's into it too, and they're starting to do this. And then you can just remove dust, and they'll remove dust, which I think is pretty cool. It's not a secret. It's starting. There's actually even a beta on Photoshop, which I sadly can't access. So the person that I talked to hopefully will help me get into it. But I think it's very important that kind of closes the circle.
It is, and that's one of the more handicaps that is for these things, that you will not have the dust removal. But all I can say is that I cannot say anything.
Yeah, I know he can't say anything. No, like
Abel can say something. But
I use, like, when I scan with my Frontier 2500, doesn't have a digital ice, so I use I think it's, what is it, Kinetronics. Like, and it actually does like 90% of the job if you're careful. And then just a little spot here and there, you're pretty good. But yeah, I have to say, digital ice is probably one of my biggest requests towards the future of hardware and software with scanning.
The thing is, you have to make it as painless as possible if you want it to thrive, especially nowadays when, I mean, we can get philosophical about this, but time is it's becoming the most valuable asset we have, and we realize about that. Maybe we because we are old, but also
You're old, I'm not old.
This is kind of the thing that you say, oh, these old people always talking about time, you know. But
no,
it
takes a lot of time. I mean, the fact that it does it automatically in Epson scanners, or Noritsu or anything like that, is like, we take it for granted, and it shouldn't be taken for granted.
I don't know. Maybe it's interesting, Abel's point of view, since he is coming later to the scene, because we are already, oh my God, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, there was nothing of this. But why he, as a photographer, he started as a photographer, and why he moved to film, maybe.
No, I start with the field all the time. My father is a field photographer, and I persuade this system.
I'm going to interrupt you. You should follow him. He's got some nice Instagram images.
And
stuff.
I think so. Another point with me is I have a Frontier, and I make things with the Frontier before starting Carmencita and things like that. But I don't know. I think at the end the point is the workflow in a business, in our house, and I think it's time at the end.
No, of course.
What do you say? But the other point in the Frontier for me, obviously, Nemati supply things and all the stuff is so good, but I think the color curve, I don't know the word, it's the key. I think if you buy a Kodak field, do you have some results? If you buy a Frontier, do you have some results? I think. The Noritsu is the other side, no, like Fuji and Kodak in the field, and it's I think, do you say before, it's all the process. Do you have one color, and do you have one workflow? And for Carmencita, I think works I think for regular shooter, maybe with me no, because I always looking for the color, no, the tone, and I know at the end I working like 8 or 9 years ago with a Frontier, and then I try to replicate a Frontier with all the scans possible, with a Pacon, with Epson. Do you have some results, but do you not have never have a Frontier if you don't have a Frontier? I think
So
sounds
you're basically
This is a good question.
This is something that is interesting. So you're saying when you scan with anything that's not a Frontier, replicating is either not possible or not easy.
It's not easy. Okay. I think it's possible. I think Negative Lab Pro makes a good result, but with another workflow, of course. What do you say? But I think, I don't know who makes a comparison, but in my head, in my craziness with the tone and the color, it's
you've taken it to the next level. I think something that I'm going to leave here for you guys to do, because I'm not going to be indefinitely in Valencia just for a day, is that you guys should do a proper, because I've seen this from people on YouTube, and don't get me wrong, I think people on YouTube are doing great work, is they're grabbing a Frontier scan, and they're doing their Negative Lab Pro, and they're comparing it in like the corner sharpness, the color tonality, the curve, which I think is very important and people forget about. And I think you guys should, because I know, Abel is starting to more into tinker into video, and they have a Spanish podcast, which I'll link up and down and everywhere. But basically, you guys should do a real lab eyes comparison between can I replicate. And this might not be good for business, but it could be interesting for the people to see, because it has the know-how. I think it's not that easy to replicate if you don't have the know-how. Like, how can I achieve, or is it possible, or the results that we get immediately look like it? Because I can look at the Frontier conversion from Negative Lab Pro, and we're mentioning the Pro because it has like the Frontier option. Is it really that similar, or is it really not that similar? Have you guys tested that yet?
I think it's more similar in the Frontier setup than the Noritsu setup. I think
so. They've
the
nailed
distance
it
with
closer with
from
the
the Frontier with the Noritsu.
I think it would be great to make to partner up with somebody to make it, because the big problem is we don't have the setup to build and the camera and everything. But the same way we did comparisons these days is to make it as objective as possible, in a way that when we did Noritsu versus Frontier, was not trying to look at both the scans and match it.
No, just to see what it looks like. Basically, like everyone says, not edited.
Exactly. Exactly. But at the end, for photographers that ship to us, that would be the result they get. And the first Noritsu versus Frontier that we did back in the day, we tried to match both as close as possible, and it didn't make any sense, because it was artificially copying the Frontier with the Noritsu, which doesn't make any sense. So we need to update it now. It was on Instagram, but COVID-19, and we need to update it with a real difference of approaching the images in a very different way. I think it would be cool to do some kind of partnership with somebody that has negatives scanned with their whatever camera they use, and negative supply.
They're telling me this now when I just came to Valencia and I could have brought it all down.
Yeah, it's fine. You ship it to us, and then
I'll drive again.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
6-hour drive.
And then we can run this on our scanner and see, even we can blind test which is which and say, okay.
Yeah, it's when people, that's something that reminds me when people scan different films and try to replicate the colors. Like 400H has a color curve that's not the Portra, so matching is not so easy. You've got to see them as different entities, and I think a Frontier scan with a Noritsu scan and with a mirrorless digitizing scan and see how they look. Of course, I feel like there's certain things you can change in values on the scanners, but when you're digitizing with a digital camera, if you shoot raw, you have so much output. And I think everything can be taken one way or another. And of course, the color engine is going to do its work, but I think it's far from finished. So that's why it's going to be harder to choose if it's, because you can't just if I scan with a Canon, I'm pointing at a Canon because I use a Canon, and or Fuji or whatever, and you convert, it's going to convert the Fuji raw. And it's going to have a different result if I use a Hasselblad camera.
But the same thing happens with, and many people ask, oh, but does the scanner know if it's Fuji or Kodak film or something? No. The funny thing is, these things are so good, it scans the image as whatever film it is from zero, and it applies the curves to it. So if a real software would be working, should be working with any type of camera, like Canon, Nikon, or it's easier with this because every image has all the information. It's this camera from this year, blah, blah, blah. But these things, you run Fuji or Kodak film or whatever, and they convert it. And yes, and the funny thing is, sometimes you could, without touching anything, scan the same frame twice.
And it doesn't look the same.
And it looks different.
Oh, no, sometimes no. That happens to me all the
But
time.
that's why, that's amazing because it means
You're like, hold, and because it has a hold option.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to hold the colors, please. The next picture was the same, like 10 seconds
no,
later.
no.
It
Good
doesn't.
try.
Suddenly, one picture is like a little yellowish and nice, and then the next one's like magenta. You're like, what the hell happened here?
I think there is some setting. No, there is some setting to keep it as neutral as possible. So you need to do all the work, and it's supposed to be more consistent. But you are losing like 50% of the power of the frontier, which is interpreting color. And the same thing with Apple, like what Apple RAW is doing now with iPhone cameras.
Computational photography.
There is a lot of computational photography there. I mean, what people think is, oh, you put it and it's pure and it's nice. No, it's not pure and not
No,
nice.
it's interpreting everything. Like you said, it's. I mean, and we were talking about it last night while we were having dinner. Is like Fuji made the film, so like they knew all the color technology they were making. So it's not so simple as like, I mean, Fuji made film, made the scanners, and made the developers, and made the developing machines, which they're not super reliable. People use Noritsu most times.
Not super reliable.
But like they controlled the whole process. Like if I make a scanner and I don't really know what the colors in the film dyes and all these things are, it's much harder to like learn. You have to like go backwards. And this is something that I saw from Negative Lab app. He tried to replicate what would happen if you do an RA4 print, and he's trying to do that in those colors. So like his is a whole color. It's an actual standalone app on your computer, and you just basically drag the images and it converts, and it has like the same like if you were printing in color in the darkroom. My last video on the Abdi, I used that and it worked much nicer. I actually had Noritsu scans and my converted scans with his, and I like them better. But of course, at the end of the day, also, I might like something that you look at it and like, that's too magenta-ish. And I'd be like, well, the skins look nicer to me or something.
There is no miracle setup. It's like the same as photographers. Like, no, because I need this camera. Because only Kodak 645. No. You can make amazing images with, no, because I need this lens and this. No. Even when people talk about camera bodies, I think it's ridiculous. Like, you don't need this camera body to do this picture. You know, you absolutely don't need a Leica to do this camera. You can, and I think many people is realizing that. But I think we fantasize all the time with, but if I only get this €29 camera, I can make pictures like Terry Richardson.
Oh yeah, I have a series of videos that I wanted to make. I never got to it, which was like people that buy gear focused on who used it, and it's like you're not gonna get the work is not the camera and the lens setup. It's more like the whole thing behind it, which it's a totally different topic.
It's something so rooted in our heads. I think it's same with companies do advertising with clothing and
it's
with
hard
cars.
You always, I mean, I have a really hard time with that. Is like you always focus on what you like and you see what they're using and you're like, I probably really need that. And that happens to me with cameras all the time where you're like, oh, the lens he used, I need that one.
And that's why women is amazing because they forget about this most of the time.
Most of the time,
Like, okay, how can I get this? Okay, he's using something like this.
It's
this,
generalizing, and like I think generalizing is never good. But like I think yes, we are usually more focused on gear, and that's why YouTube and gear reviews make a lot more views than talking about tonality or composition.
Which actually should be fuck it, I will say it. It's okay. So one of the ideas I want to make. And complementing this, maybe Negative Supply will sponsor me for this. I don't know. Hey, Negative Supply. The thing is, but the thing is, we realized there is so much people scanning their own, and of course we cannot reach anybody physically and by facility. So what I've seen really cool pictures by folks in Valencia and friends that they just develop and scan their own, the same I was scanning my own 10 years ago. But when it comes to color correction, they have a hard time. You know, it's like, okay, this was the output and I don't really know where to go from this. I would like to make a masterclass online, like for, I don't know, like $10 or $15, whatever. That, you know, is like a meal. And go through different scans from Canon, Epson scanners, Nikon Coolscan, even self-scanned, or even the result from negative supply with Negative Lab Pro and blah, blah, blah. And show how to see color and understand color and skin tone and how to correct it with the tools we have, which is usually Lightroom and maybe some things in Photoshop. But to empower people to actually use more these tools, because basically everything we do is for people to shoot more film.
I think the point who a lab who makes something cool for the community is how do you correct your images and who do you work in your images for look the best way. And I don't care if it's a Frontier, a Epson scan, and I think it's a process of learning, and maybe searching for the community is not in the point right now. I think you looking for a new Leica or new lens for a Leica, but I think it's not a critic. This statement is not a critic. I think the people don't thinking in, okay, I have my contacts, my Leica, but then what? I have to do a work in the image, and I think why this is magenta and why this is blue and all the things is together is the community. I think when do you make a lab print, do you play with the magenta and the process? It's all the process.
I think when we shoot film and we're finishing, and this is something I start when I do my videos for people, is I want the biggest outcome to be correct. I want people to really shoot film and get good results. Not because I want them to shoot film and I want them to buy the next roll, because when people are starting, especially starting, and nowadays there's more people starting than ever, and there's not so much know-how from the old generation, is that they need to get happy results, good results, so they buy more film. And it's selfish statement, because I want film to continue. So yes, I want them to have, I want them to continue, and I want to keep on being able to buy what is in stock right now and have my options of picking colors and picking black and whites. But like, I think that's the biggest thing is like, you guys as a lab make a course where people with whatever system they're using, and let's say, like you said, Epson or Frontier and Aritsu or whatever, and they're getting results and they're not 100% happy, and they want to match them as what they want, because at the end you want to match it to what you see and your visuals. You know, it's your visuals. People in weddings like some visuals, people in editorial like some other visuals. Like it's totally personal and subjective. I think it'd be great to see, because I struggle with that, and I've been using these converting tools, and I've been having a happy time getting decent results. I remember I stopped using color because it was something that I could never see properly. We heard this
so many times. Chechu was exactly the same, and so many people who love photography and love craftsmanship hate color because they could not get the color they want. And that's where we try to come into place and be the palanca. I don't know how to say
you're trying to leverage to getting good results and being happy. I think that's very important. So I think we're going to end it somewhere there. I think we've talked a lot about this. I'll leave the links to Carmencita's and Abel's Instagram, because it's very interesting, and the videos we've mentioned and all that. There'll be chapters, guys, so you can scroll through. Of course, you can leave a comment about what you think about the video. If you want to see more things like these, maybe we can try to make something else. Maybe they can come up north to see me.
I promise I will try to read everything. I will try.
We'll try to do all of this. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think there's an interesting time starting with, old technology slowly fading away, new technology and new things coming up. And
okay. Can I say the finishing sentence?
You can say the finishing sentence.
Okay. So I think I love the sentence that goes through, like, when something is as simple and as well executed as possible is the closest to magic that there is. And I think it's our job to be that. because coming to the lab, shipping the film, buying the film, getting to the exposure, it's a huge effort. So our job should be to make it as close to magic as possible, and say, you send the film and we will help you out. And
It's like the Kodak statement. What was it? You shoot it,
we do the rest, something like this.
Yeah.
but Carmencita is
Yes.
going to take it to the next level.
It's and that's one of the reasons why we get along so good with especially with Kodak Alaris, and we are absolutely on the same page. And since we opened the grant, it's been super well, and there is very exciting ideas from their end to bring back to the market, and that could really boost things, I think. But this is absolutely secret, and you should cut this
Well,
part.
guys, thanks for watching.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you
having
for
us.
this, and we'll
Yeah.
see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Chao. Igual, tío. Muy bien. Yo me quedaría aquí charlando más rato.